Hello, hello, and welcome. This is Justin Coletti of SonicScoop here with Sylvia Massy. Sylvia, thanks so much for being on the SonicScoop channel.
That was great.
You're great.
Thanks.
In case you guys missed it, Sylvia just did an amazing masterclass right here on the channel. She walked us through an entire song by an artist, Grammy-winning artist named Jason Isbell, famous for the Drive-By Truckers, now famous as an artist in his own right. And she really took us soup to nuts. You started with drums. You took us all the way to the end. We got to see what was happening on your mix bus chain, all that. We got so many questions that came in. So super thrilled you could do it. If you guys didn't see it, check out the link down below and watch the full masterclass. Sylvia, before we start pestering with you questions and listening to your engineering and production wisdom, I just want to give some quick shout outs and thanks. A big shout out and thanks to Sound Toys for making this one free to the public. The reason that these MixCon masterclasses are free because of our sponsors. So if you liked any of the plugins that she used, check them out, soundtoys.com, where you can get anything that they make for free for 30 days to try it out. And tomorrow at this time, we actually have a workshop on their new reverb super plate. You use the little plate in here. A lot of people commented on that.
I want to try that super plate. Yeah, I'm very interested in that.
Nice. We'll get you hooked up with that. And we have a workshop for you guys you can check out tomorrow. So big thanks to Sylvia. Big thanks to Sound Toys. A little later on, I'll ask you about your top favorite Sound Toys plugins. And big thanks to Jason Isbell once again. So Sylvia, we have a whole bunch of questions that came from the audience. I want to focus mostly on those. But since I have you here, and this is my first time talking to you, it's my first time doing a Sylvia Massy interview, I have to be greedy and ask some of my own questions. The first time I ever heard of you, Sylvia, was reading through the liner notes of the Tool album Undertow, because I loved the way it sounded. And this was before I knew anything about record production. I said, this record sounds different. It's just like, there's no other records that sound like this. It was so unique. And I had to look up who did it, and it was this woman, Sylvia Massy. And that name is stuck in my head ever since. But so I have a couple of questions for you. The first one is I want to ask jealously and selfishly about that album. What was it like working on Undertow? More specifically, why do you think it sounds the way it does? What makes that record unique in your mind?
Wow. The Tool band is a special band, and they blend in a way that is different than other bands that I've worked with, in that it's very drum heavy and very bass heavy. So that's where I put a lot of concentration in that. There's one guitar player, Adam, and we tried to make the record sound as live as possible. So capturing as much of what happens on stage with them as we could in the studio. And so that meant less focus on overdubbing guitar layers and things like that, and just going for the core. And that's what you hear on that Undertow record is a really strong core, that the drumming and the bass, the rhythm section is just really tight, and powerful and upfront. And in recording that, I used a lot of subharmonic synthesizer kind of effects to make it big and growly. The band is great, and they're just terrific. We got along very well. And I've got some stories I'd love to share, but maybe later.
Right. Well, speaking of bands that are really tight and just amazing at playing together, one of the other credits that I noticed you on, again, before I was into production myself, was Red Hot Chili Peppers, who are amazing at playing together. And you did, I don't know if it's not a lesser known track, but it's a cut off of it's not off of Red Hot Chili Peppers album, but Love Roller Coaster is probably the biggest song by the Red Hot Chili Peppers that actually isn't on a Red Hot Chili Peppers album. You did that song, to my understanding. And one of the cool things about your work, and I've noticed it, when you work with the Red Hot Chili Peppers, it sounds like the Red Hot Chili Peppers should. When you work with System of a Down, it sounds like they should. When you listen to Johnny Cash, it sounds like they should. Like, I don't feel like I'm hearing Sylvia Massy. I feel like I'm hearing the full personality of the band. And I think Love Roller Coaster is a great example of that, where when you take the early 90s version of the Red Hot Chili Peppers, it is like almost an exaggeration of everything that they are, done so perfectly. Can you tell us a tiny bit about what producing that track or working on that track, Love Roller Coaster, was like? And then after that, just give me a sense for how you're able to do that so well, to go from artist to artist, genre to genre, and really make them come to the front instead of Sylvia Massy coming to the front.
Well, whenever I meet an artist and start working together, I have to kind of feel out where I'm needed in the process. So with with a band like Tool or System of a Down in particular, I was there just to capture the performances, and
Hmm.
that's what it is. It's not me creating the performances. I have to make it so that they feel comfortable enough in that studio space to give me that fantastic live performance that you get in front of a festival audience or something, you know.
Hmm.
So so that's what you get from that Chili Peppers and that those Tool records, and the System of a Down is going to be a lot the same too. I worked with Rick Rubin on the System of a Down record, and the intention of that from the beginning, it was the debut album, was to just show what that band does live. Because if you ever
Hmm.
saw them when they were playing in LA in the 90s, it's just like crazy. Remarkable band to see live. So that idea was to get them into Sound City with Rick and capture that as well as we could. We didn't even we actually didn't do overdubs on the guitars on that. It was just all single performance. For the most part, there were a few overdubs on a couple songs on that debut album, but that's just raw System of a Down. That now on uh, in other cases, I'll spend a lot of time working with the band on this on the material, like deciding which songs to do, rearranging songs, rewriting lyrics, or tasking the band to work on lyrics or to write a new part. Um, and then I'll go get deep into the instruments that they'll play. You know, let's try some new instrumentation, and then layering and doing overdubs and layering, and especially vocal overdubs, harmonies. Uh, when it's my time to do that as a producer, I'll take that role, and I'll provide what I can to bring that artist's vision to life.
Very cool. I'm a big fan of your discography, so I could ask so many questions about specific records, and I'm tempted to, but I really know what the people are here for. And that's for getting their questions answered and asking you about like how you got specific sounds and how you approach specific things in the
Good.
mix.
I
And
love
let's
talking
get,
about gear and technique.
all right, let's get into that stuff. Cool. So, first couple thing, I'm going to do another quick shout out. We had a bunch of love for Sound Toys in the chat. Paul Lucas says the Crystallizer is one of the craziest plugins.
Oh
Fantastic.
yeah,
Uh,
it's nuts.
Rocket Studio said, wow, that Crystallizer. People really like that. Uh, Crystal Circle of Tone says Lil Plate is my favorite plugin, nice and dark. So a lot of people were saying positive things about Sound Toys in there. Rocket Recording Studio says, I must admit that years ago it was Justin who convinced me to purchase the entire Sound Toys collection. They sound amazing. So I had to throw that out there to give those guys some more love. Here's the Sylvia love, though. Cauldron Audio, first question. We'll kind of take them in order because you started this mix with drums. And you, one of the first things you brought up was your slate trigger and showing the kind of samples that you were adding. And Cauldron Audio asks, do drummers ever complain about the original sound being altered?
You know, that happens on rare occasion because I'm really conscious of how the drummer will perceive their drums in the mix. Plus, my intention is not to replace the drum sounds at all. It's just to augment them. So hopefully, I'm adding just a little more beef and just a little more snap to the original snare. But the original snare, unless it was recorded badly, there's no reason I'm going to cover that up.
Right.
Sometimes I
Great.
get some bad snares though when I get sent mixes, you know. Sometimes they're just like just full of hi-hat. You can't get the hi-hat out of it no matter
Yes.
what, no matter what. So you just have to gate the hell out of it, and
Mhm.
then add a snare sample that, or a selection of samples that are close to the original sound to kind of emulate what the live
I know exactly
sound
what you mean.
is like.
Yeah.
Mm.
Another question around drums here is from, I hope I'm saying this right, Occidendum, who says, any techniques or microphone recommendations for recording a clickier kick drum?
Oh yeah, there's all kinds of tricks for that. Okay. So we start with the drum itself.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's
if
big.
you want it clickier, you might tighten up that batter head just a little bit,
Mm.
all the way around. Tighten it up a little bit. Now the batter itself, the beater that hits that head, there's different types that you can get. And I like the type that's reversible so that you can have a hard surface on one side of the beater and like a plastic. And then on the other side, it's like a felt. So, so if you want a clickier sound, you turn it over to the plastic side of the beater, just right down there on the kick drum pedal. Flip that beater around so it's the harder plastic side, or replace the beater with a hard plastic one. Okay, that's the second thing you can try. The other thing is there's an old trick that we used to do when we wanted to have the most um, uh, most percussive double kick drums like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you take a quarter and you tape it right where the beater hits the batter
Ah.
head, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you tape it right across the spot on both heads, and tape that quarter right on there. Now, when the beater hits that head, you hear a distinct click because of the quarter. And
Right.
depending on the sound you're going for, you can tune the sound of that click by using a different type of coin,
Mm.
a penny,
Mm-hmm.
a dime versus a
Right.
quarter or a 50-cent piece. Okay, there's that. The other thing is the inside the kick drum. Um, the hollowness of that space can soften the sound of a kick hit. So what I'll do is I'll take some stuffing and I'll shove it into the kick drum and push it against the batter head from the inside. So I'm damping down the batter head on that kick drum. Now you're going to have a very tight and punchy kick. Now, if you use all those techniques, it'll probably be too much for,
Right.
depending on the music. But
Mhm.
just one or two of these little ideas will help adjust your kick drum sound. And there's more. I'm sure there's more, but that's enough to start, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think we're in great shape there. Brilliant stuff. All right. Another question around drums from Rocket Recording Studio says, "Hi, Sylvia. Would you please elaborate a little on your technique of drum side chaining the whole kit? That technique really made the drum kit come to life. I think in this particular track, you had it going to the Bomb Factory 1176. That was like a parallel bus. So tell us a little bit more about what you do there and what you're looking to do there."
Well, I found that when I used to mix entirely analog on the old Neve, that it always sounded better if I had kick and snare going through an old compressor and brought up on a separate fader. So that's a side chain compression. In the box, I'll do the same thing. So I'll bring up an aux track with a stereo compressor, depending on what I'm trying to do. I'll have an aggressive compressor or a soft compressor. One of the ones that I like for side chaining drums in the box is the Jack Joseph Puig, the JJP
Mhm.
Puig Child. Right?
Yeah.
It's an
Hmm.
emulation of a Fairchild plugin, of a Fairchild Stereo 670 analog unit, but it's a plugin that you can use mono or stereo or whatever. Anyway, that seems to have a little bit of a graininess that I like in that Fairchild emulation. UA does an emulation of a Fairchild also that's a little more accurate, I think. But the JJP has the growl that I want. I want a little bit of an effect there with that side chain. So when I bring up let's say just the kick and snare and I'll use a usually a Bomb Factory 1176. Um, I'll just add that in until it just kind of brings the whole drum kit to life. So I'll add a side chain of the entire drum kit going through the Puig Child, and then an additional side chain of just the kick and snare, just so I can get the main part of the rhythm section to stick out a little bit more. And then when I finish a mix towards the end of the mix, I might make adjustments just to the side chain to bring up the kick and snare again. But I generally won't adjust the main tracks, but just the side chain to get to where I need to go.
All right. Very good. Great answer. And there are three questions. The next one here, this is a good segue because you were talking about what you liked to do in the analog days, and you are surrounded by analog gear, and you have a computer there. And we saw your lovely transformers at the end of the video that you run things through. I thought it was so cool.
Yeah,
But
over here too.
Yeah, we have 3 questions here that are kind of emblematic of a whole bunch of questions that came in around your split between analog and digital. So I'm going to read out a few of them and we'll try to extract one question from it. So Paul Lucas says, is Sylvia using any outboard gear or just in the box? Because you really take us through so many plugins. Daniel is asking, what exactly does the hardware mixer do that we see there? And XBO asks, Sylvia, do you really need to go through analog gear and back into the DAW before you complete your mix? So can you give us a sense for that? Are you hybrid these days? Are you more in the box than outboard? We saw the transformers, that being an analog component. Are there other analog components you're using as well, or are you leaning more and more on the computer these days? What's the breakdown like for you?
Well, the mix that I did for the MixCon presentation was a hybrid mix. It's um, it's been recorded digitally, and I have it running out of my computer into the rack of digital gear, the Dangerous Audio, uh, the D to A's, and then from the DDA into a summing mixer, which is analog, and then the analog section of it then has an insert that I send off into some other rack gear. So I not only have the summing mixer, but in the insert of that summing mixer, I'm putting in a stereo compressor, which is a uh, Dangerous Music compressor. It's their stereo compressor. It's right here. I wonder, can I, it's, yeah. And then a Bax EQ, sometimes I'll use an EQ across the whole thing. But I'm going to just pull my computer down, my laptop, so you
Sure.
can see in the rack here. Can you see that down here? Let's see.
Yeah, we get a little bit of a look there. I see the bottom of the console. Maybe tilt it down just a little bit more to see
Oh,
the rack.
there
There we
it
go.
is,
Yeah, we're
right?
seeing it.
There it is. And that is the um, Dangerous Music stereo compressor. And there's also a stereo EQ, which is called a Bax EQ. And it's just a slight smile. It's not barely touching the sound of the mix, except to kind of brighten up the top and to shape the low a little bit. So that's what the Bax EQ does. Most of the EQ work will be done in the box. Lately, though, I've been turning off the analog compressor and I'm using a new stereo bus compressor that I use in the box. It's by George Massenburg. It's a new, I don't even think it's on the market yet, but it's good. It's really good. So I'm excited about that. So I'm using that. But it depends on the project how I'm going to approach these mixes. There's times when a client will come in and say, I want mixes, but I want it all analog, absolutely all analog. Okay, well, they've recorded it in digital, so we're not going to go all analog, but but I have mixed. I brought up all the faders on the desk, uh, the Rupert Neve designs here, and mixed on the desk, and used the some of the other stuff I have in the racks here. I've got GML 8200 EQ that I use for stereo bus. I have a Stamchild analog compressor, which is a boutique 670. I use a lot of loop trotter too when I go analog too, which I love the loop trotter compression. And I use a whole rack of 500 series EQs over here. And maybe I could show you. I'm going to just show you some of this stuff. This
Sure.
is the analog stuff in the room. Here we go. This is the
Nice.
This is the loop trotter, and you can see I've
Yep.
got a selection of. Oh, it's all crooked. Sorry.
It's
There
all
it
right.
is. You can see the Angus EQs.
Yeah.
There's some warm mic pre's. There's a bunch of Moog EQs, and so I'll patch in and out of the patch bay some of those things to add into the mix too when I'm doing it all analog. Um, but but I also am working entirely in the box when we do when we do Dolby Atmos mixing here, because we have a 9.2.4 speaker system here for immersive mixing. And in that case, I don't use any analog at all. It's all in the box, and it's all routed into the speakers and back into making these ADM files. So it has to stay 100% digital that way. So it depends on the project. It depends on the material. Most of the time, though, I'm mixing with the Dangerous Rig through and summing into analog, the analog summing mixer, because I like the way that sounds the best. I think the having it summing through analog is an improvement in over just keeping it in the box. That's what
All
my
right,
ears
very
say.
cool.
Hmm.
Yeah, great answer.
Okay.
All right, a few more questions here. We'll keep cooking. So this was a question here specifically. Did you record the Jason Isbell track, or were you just mixing this one? What was your involvement, if any, before the mix process?
I did not record it. No, it was recorded in Nashville. I think it was at Blackbird, wasn't it?
Yeah, by Matt Ross.
Yeah.
Matt
People were really
Ross.
impressed by how great it sounded. And often on these
Oh,
MixCon
it's so good.
presentations,
Yeah.
yes, from great
Yeah.
producers like yourselves,
Yeah.
they'll often say, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. It's great to get a mixed project that's actually been recorded well. I mean, it makes your job so much easier. Thank you. When
Indeed.
people pay attention to, phase when they're recording with several microphones and things like that. It was really well recorded, sure.
Absolutely. That was something that a lot of folks recognized. And every once in a while, people will get a little bit depressed when they watch a MixCon video. They're like, no wonder the mix sounded good. The recording sounded so much better than my recording sound. And that's,
Yeah. And then it's also the same way with it when you're recording a band. It's like if you start with a shitty band, you're gonna have a shitty recording. And
right. Yes, I hear you. Yep. It always, like, the closer you get to the beginning of the signal chain, like, the actual player is more important than the instrument. The instrument is probably a little bit more important than the microphone. The microphone is probably more important than the preamp. And then, it's like the closer you get to the origin of things, the more important it is.
Yeah, and the song is more important than the player.
Buff, I hear you. That's totally true. I mean, take how many, how much success people are having as cover artists on YouTube. Like, if you start with a great song, you could be a less good player than an amazing player, singing Happy Birthday. Like, you could have Aretha Franklin come out and sing Happy Birthday, and it's good, but it's nowhere near her singing like something we want to hear. So for sure. All right. A couple more here. This is one kind of on the same tip, which is, does your process change depending on whether you were the one to record and produce it or not? So if you're getting something that you've recorded and produced versus you're getting in a session from outside, does your process to the mix change?
Absolutely. Because when I record, I am doing that with the thought of mixing it as the result. So when I'm recording in a way where I'm already figuring out, well, the panning will be this way and this way. If I'm recording a guitar in a verse, okay, this is the idea. I want this part to be stereo, so I'm going to record 2 mics, 2 cabs, 2 heads, and for one performance, so I can have it stereo in the verse or the mixer, whoever it is. So when I'm recording, I oftentimes will record with the mix in mind and laying everything out, panning wise, sound wise. I don't want there to be a lot of work left over for the mix, whether I'm mixing it or not. If I do a lot of that EQ work and summing work ahead of time and I don't mix it, well, I'm leaving a lot less for people to fuck up later. Yeah, right. So that's one reason when I'm recording, I really do pay attention to what the final result will be.
Great. All right. Still moving here. We have a few more that came in during the presentation, and then we'll move into your questions that are coming in now during this live chat. This is an interesting one from Pale Criminal. He asks, if you're working with a band that wasn't recorded live at the same time, what is your take on the idea of creating a fake room? Is this worth doing using auxes for a best stereo space? So I guess the question here is, if you're getting a record that was recorded multiple overdubs, not live altogether, do you try to create one space for all those instruments to live in? And if so, how would you do so?
Oh, wow. Well, yeah, if especially if it's supposed to sound live, then I'll create a room, and it could be digitally. But what I like to do even better than digitally, if you have a way to do it, is get some nice condenser mics and a PA, or just even like one speaker, a couple speakers, put them out in the room, run the drums out into a room, and record the room with the drums in it, just the recording of the drums in it. Add that into your mix. That's gonna help. That's gonna be nice. And if like you say, we're trying to get the whole band in the same room, then I might just leave that PA setup and, add that, room to all the instruments that might need that, and just have a whole, selection of tracks that are just ambience that, is, created after the fact. Yeah, that's a good idea. I would do it live more than I've had more success live than I have, creating a bunch of digital reverbs that kind of emulate a room. It's always better if it's live for some reason.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I've done something similar. Pale Criminal says, again, he has a second question here. When doing two bus processing, so doing your processing across your mix bus or master bus, at what point do you dial that in, your mix bus processing? Does that happen after the mix just feels like it's in a good spot, or is it one of the last steps? Or would you do it really early on and mix into it? So what are your thoughts there about doing processing on the mix bus, and at what stage in the mix would you add that kind of thing?
I like, mixing into the stereo bus processing. So it is in a template that the template that I used on the session has a stereo bus, um, processing already built into it. So, that typically is the Ozone. I think I talked about it. Yeah, the Ozone, 10.
Mhm.
Um, and, with the maximizer, sometimes I'll turn off the maximizer, sometimes I'll add the, George Massenburg Designs, compressor on the stereo bus. But yeah, I wanna start with that. When I start with it though, it'll be at a moderate setting. It won't be heavy-handed. But I wanna hear the mix from the beginning as it would sound finished with the stereo bus processing, yes.
Cool. One more question that came in during the premiere, and then we're going to get to all these beautiful questions that are coming in during the live Q&A here. Isomatic asks, well, there's actually two here. Isomatic says, and they're related. Question: how does Sylvia stay emotionally connected to the song and make decisions based on that? And he follows to say, especially in instrumentals with no lyrics. So how do you find an emotional connection point to the song, and how do you stay emotionally connected to it throughout the process?
Well, you just gotta start by loving music and loving a lot of different types of music to start. So, because you never know what you're gonna get. And I appreciate the effort that musicians put into their legacy. Um,
Mm,
Not all the music that I get is stuff that I jumping up and down, to mix. Some of it could be challenging. Like, I have a client who's a wonderful client, and I've been mixing his records for years. Um, but this year he brought me a record that he did with his son, who's a youth and doesn't sing well and doesn't really want to sing well. But I have been mixing a record with a child singing who's not interested in doing it. There's no way that this could win.
mm,
But I'll do my best. And in fact, the last song I did with them was very touching. So you have to dig in and figure out what it is that's happening with these people's music, and participate it in the way that you can help. Um, I am lucky that most of the time the music I work on is just fantastic, and I get to
right.
participate in it. And so oftentimes I'll actually choose music that I feel will be more likely to win. Of course,
Hmm.
we wanna work on the winning music.
Yeah.
But initially, like, if someone sends me some demos and, "Hey, what do you think about us working together?" If I get a little glimpse of that emotion in their music, I'm there for them, because I can draw that out.
All right. One more here for hear you. Pale Criminal says, how much in the way of creative liberty are you taking with doing things like creating transitions and reshaping sounds when mixing? are you really treating it just as the tracks I get or what I get to work with, or do you get to take liberties like that? He
Mm.
says specifically in creating transitions, maybe changing arrangements, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
What is the mixer's role? Where does that start and end?
Yeah, it's a challenge, because, there's so much I want to do, but I I hold back most of the time. Not all the time, though. If I really hear a part that needs to be in a mix and I'm working on the mix, I'll just if it's a vocal part, I'll sing it. If it's a
Mm,
keyboard part, I'll play it, I've added congas on tracks, I've added guitar on tracks. Um, but that's with artists that I know they're gonna be okay with that. If I'm starting out with a new artist, I will not do that unless they specifically say, "Sylvia, go for it. Do whatever you wanna do."
hmm
Once I did a mix for a Canadian artist, and the song was good, but I thought it was just empty, like, it was just drums and a little bit of funky guitar or something. It was just wasn't enough. I added vocals, I added congas, I added guitar, some synth parts, and, because they said, "Sylvia, do whatever you want, just do everything you want." So I did. And they came back and they had some notes for me, and they said, "Sylvia, we love your mix, but we would like a few things changed. Um, could you do the mix without the guitar, without the extra vocals, without the congas, and without all the extra keyboard stuff? Just do the." And I was like, "Okay."
I feel like
I
we've all been there.
Yeah, I'm sure,
Yeah.
right? You gotta
Yes.
try you just what it is, the secret is just not being precious. Because when they
Mm-hmm.
turned all that stuff off, I got precious. I was upset that they
Of
didn't
course.
like my part. It's not my song. I
Hmm
have no right to wanna put my bullshit all over their stuff unless, most of the time they're okay with it, but I can't be precious when they say they didn't like it. Well, fine. Uh,
Right.
yeah, it
Well, I
happens.
think this is a good segue into talking about the idea of you are a creative person, I think, and you have a book. And I can't believe,
Ah,
having known you for ages as a force out there. We haven't met until now, unfortunately, but I've known who you are, following your work for ages. I didn't know about your book, Recording Unhinged. I want to bring it up here on the
yeah,
screen so people can see
I
it.
have
You
I have a copy.
Oh, you do? Okay, then show it on screen
I
here.
have
Let me
a
put you
copy.
back on screen.
There
We'll put you in solo mode. There it
yeah,
is, Recording Unhinged. Yeah, so
yeah,
check this out. This is, and did you draw the pictures in this book, or how did you create
yeah,
this
I
book?
drew this cover and I do art when I'm not doing mixing and
I was
stuff.
about to bring up, I had it on here on screen, this giant mammoth that you painted, this oil painting that's bigger than
Oh god,
you. I
yeah.
was going to share that too. So, can you tell us a little bit about Recording Unhinged, what's in it, and what people are going to get if they check it out?
Oh god. Well, it's like the best studio toilet reader. Like, you put it in the toilet, and then you
Hmm
go in and you grab a little snippet every time you're in there. It's like, just take 5 minutes and just pick one little thing, and then you'll be like, "Ah," and then you go and that'll change the way you do your recording. Maybe not for the better. But, no, the book is full of ideas for recording, and it's also full of stoner jokes
hmm
and drawings and little diagrams and cartoons, and it's fun. It's just a it's and it's not just me. I interviewed about 35 different other producers and engineers and added their parts in there too. They have stories about unconventional recordings. So there's, you know, stories from all kinds of people in here. So it's a good read and great for the studio. So everybody needs a
Right.
copy.
Another place that you're creative, I think, that I've noticed, I've been on, live calls with you, 3 or 4 times in the past, kind of getting prepared to do this. And you're always wearing something different and cool. And you're doing something different and cool with your hair each time. And I see very old photos of you, and I don't think you had the same exploratory fashion sense that you do today. Did that happen at a certain point in your life, or have you always been that way?
That's an interesting observation because when I was starting out, I think for the first 10 years, I tried really hard to dress down because
Hmm
I'm not the artist. I'm not the rock star.
Right.
So I would be t-shirt and jeans in the studio and kind of just, disappear into the woodwork until I'm needed.
hmm
Um, First 10 years. And then when I started to have some success, well, then I would, gee, I think I wore a dress today,
Hmm.
or
Hmm.
boot.
Yep.
Um, so now I just love being a girl,
Yeah.
I I wear whatever I want and have fun hairstyles and funny nails, fingernails
Yep.
and stuff. Because, why not enjoy life
Yeah.
a little bit? And
It's funny.
I get to
I've
do it
noticed my
now.
my wife, the older she's getting, the more that she's comfortable with exploring her sense of just doing fun things visually, and I think it's cool to see people embrace it.
It's about uh, living life as an artist,
Yeah.
24 by 7 lifestyle, right? So that
Hmm.
it's in what you eat, how you cook, how you dress, what your surroundings are like, what you do for a living, the car you drive, all these things.
Yeah.
So I want to live as an artist, and that's why I live up here in the woods in Ashland, because it's
Mm.
a little tiny art community and the overhead is low, so I can
Mhm.
kind of have my business here and do my music stuff for other people, but for myself, I've got my art studio and I can just spend more time being a creative person.
Right. And when did you make that change in your life? Were you always in a small community like this, or did that shift happen at some point? And if so, when and how and why?
Yeah, when I was
The why you've described.
in LA, yeah,
Mhm.
it was. I did my time in LA. I moved to
Mhm.
LA from San Francisco when I realized that if I wanted to really take it seriously as a producer, then I had to go to where the record store, I mean, the record companies were, and they were
Yep.
all in LA at the time. So I moved to LA and lived there for about 15 years. Um, but at the end of that time, I was ready to get out. And
Mhm.
I grew up in the mountains in Colorado. So the Northern California is where I headed, in the base of Mount Shasta. And I'm still about 40 miles away from Mount Shasta. So I'm up in the woods. It's nice.
Yeah, all right. I get it. I'm in New Hampshire these days. I was in
There
Brooklyn
it is.
for, is where I came from, and it's the same thing. And yeah, I feel like I've only become more creative since leaving New York, which is the opposite of what some people expect. And I feel like there's been no slow down your creativity getting away from LA. In a way, you can kind of become more yourself sometimes when you have a little bit of
Exactly.
space. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not, chasing, it's not running on the treadmill constantly,
Right.
which I felt like I was doing in LA, and,
Hmm.
a lot less panic days.
Right. Since we're talking
Mhm.
about some of the personal experience stuff, I feel like I have to ask you the obligatory question that must be asked of all of the female producers that come on, because we are in an industry that is something like, it might be 90% male. I don't know if you have a take on it. I look at our YouTube, and YouTube is already skews male, and then we're in music production. I see the stats, and it's so male heavy, and there aren't as many female music producers and audio engineers as men. For you, do you feel like you have a sense for why that is? That's one question. And another question is, do you feel like there are ways it has been both an advantage to you and a disadvantage to you, or is it not something you think about much? Can you give us your take
Mhm.
on that whole can of worms?
Well, I will take advantage of it if it comes up, but typically there's not a whole lot of difference. I haven't found, a lot of difference in how I'm treated, um, as a woman. I think that most women are just busy doing other things, like having
Mm,
families and, you know, studio life is great. I
mhm,
love it, but you're in the studio, you don't really have a lot of time for relationships, family, babies, taking care of yourself, being a girl. It's just like
mhm,
the kind of the description of me dressing down for 10 years. Uh,
mhm,
it was just to get just to get me started.
mhm.
Um, I don't know. I guess guys don't really dress up in the studio. Maybe they do.
There's a
They dress
subset of, a certain type of producer who will always have like the hat, or they're dressed out to the nines. But yeah, the
right,
majority of
right.
people, especially in rock music, are not dressing up.
Now your engineer in the studio
Right.
or your assistant, now they ain't
Yes.
dressing up.
Good
They don't
point.
wanna be seen, right?
Yes.
So,
I,
uh,
I honestly, in the audio world, I feel weird. Like when I put on, I always wear the black V-neck when I'm on video, but I don't
yeah,
actually only wear black V-necks in real life. I just know like it's accepted as an audio guy. I'm wearing the official, you know, I don't know, the official
black
outfit of the
V-neck.
communist regime of audio.
I got the same thing. Mine is a black scoop.
All
You
right,
know,
all right. I gotta try. I gotta try the rocking the scoop. If I started wearing the scoop, though, they would comment. For you, no one's gonna say anything other than Sylvie looks great. I start wearing the scoop, people are gonna have snide remarks to make about it. So there's the prejudice. That's the true prejudice that I have to deal with that you don't understand, Sylvia.
poor guy.
All right. Well, good stuff. I want to get to some of the questions that have been coming in from the audience. If you have a little bit more time for us, we're at about 4:40. I don't want to keep you forever. We've been chatting 40 minutes already. It's been flying by because you have so much wisdom to share. But let's get to some of the questions that have been coming through. We'll see how many we can do. Let's see. Oh, here's an interesting question from Martin. And this is something that harkens back to the beginning of the conversation where we are talking about the analog versus digital thing, but this is a different angle to it. Martin says, what are the effects that you still prefer in the analog realm?
Oh. Um, a plate reverb, a real plate, there's nothing better. And too bad we just don't have enough room for them. They're big.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone's gotten used to the digital reverbs, but if you get a chance to actually use an analog um, plate, wow, that's
Yep.
that's one of my favorites. Um, what else analog that I love? Um, well, I have the old Rupert. No, this is not old. It's a Rupert Neve Designs. It's a new 5030 5088, and
Mm.
I'm tracking analog through that. And if I had my old Neve, I'd be using that too. But this thing is so great. So those old Neve EQs analog can't beat them. The 1073s, 1081s, still the best thing out there for tracking. And if I ever am tracking, that's what I'll choose first. Is it, I love the API too. But really tracking on the old Neves is the way to go. And the new Neve is fantastic too. So what else do I love? Well, I love old stay levels. Those are old
Oh, the
compressors.
gates. Yeah.
Retro makes a nice
Mm-hmm.
stay level these days. What else do I like?
Yeah, they've only
Mm.
very recently been emulated. It's one of those pieces of gear where you put something through and just instantly like, oh, that sounds different, you know? Uh,
Yeah, right. Yeah,
this,
and
this is
used to be that you could find them for just $100 or something, but no,
right.
not
But they have since
anymore.
been discovered, sadly.
Yeah, they've been discovered. What else is great? Oh God, well, microphones. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
We're going to have to talk more
microphones.
about that. You guys saw that at the end of the presentation, Chris Johnson showed us around the mic museum. Do you have a rough idea of how many microphones are in your mic museum? Do you have?
Yeah, I think it's about 3,500. Um, we bought the museum. We bought a museum, and the museum had about 2,500, and I had 1,000 of my own already. Mainly production mics. But now we have all of them. There's only a
Mm-hmm.
few we don't have, actually. There's a few we don't have. One is a
A few.
Telefunken Elam 251. The other is a Neumann M49.
So
And
the
for God's sakes,
so yeah, the
I
most expensive mics, like two most expensive, most yeah,
yeah,
they're
those are the
they're
ones we
pricey.
don't have.
Yes, understood.
Yeah, yeah. Oh,
On the topic
um,
of plates, Mark Ruffino writes in, I haven't used a real plate, but the Sound Toy Super Plate is amazing. Looking forward to that presentation tomorrow. Sylvia, if you liked the sound of the little plate, I really got to say, I'm not just showing for Sound Toys because they sponsor this thing, but the Super Plate, they so they have that one plate model in the little plate. They now have
yeah.
5 different ones that they've all emulated, and some of them are like weird ones that Ken has had in his. He has I think one of the world's biggest synth museums, and they also have like all of these plate reverbs. They had like, I think 3 or 4 different versions of the EMT 140, and then like a couple of like weirder, lesser known plates, and they modeled all of them, and then the front end of them, so you can switch between the different types of front end as well as the plate
Wow,
itself. It's
yes.
wild. You got to check this thing out. We're gonna have to hook you up.
Well, I have
So,
to say, another plugin that I love for reverb is the Valhalla
oh sure,
video
yeah,
recorder, right? And
yeah,
I and
affordable
I've
too.
used it. But I have to say that the one setting, the one reverb on that little plate
Hmm.
is just so sweet, and it's so
Hmm.
versatile. It's just like you bring it up and it works for some reason.
Yep.
It works, and so I'm really looking forward to this bigger plate. What do you
Cool.
call it again? What are they?
The super plate.
Oh, the super plate. Okay, I'm looking forward to that. I will be using
Yep.
that for sure.
All right. Let's see some more questions here. This one is from Cauldron Audio, who says, oh, no, I'm sorry, James O'Brien. He says, any tips on getting weighty toms without being too harsh in the 2 to 4K area? Is it mic
Oh,
technique? Is it processing? So, general questions here about getting better
uh-huh.
tom sounds that are full but
Okay.
not harsh.
All right. Well, I can get into it like I did the kick drum, and let me do that for a minute.
Sure.
Uh, First of all, you got to tune those toms. Oh God, someone's at the door. Who the hell is that? Hang on one sec. I'll be right back.
Sure. So, I'm going to entertain you all while Sylvia is away. So, do you guys know any good jokes? All right. You all by now probably know the one I always go to, which is my favorite music joke, which is how many hipsters does it take to screw in a light bulb? Really? You've never heard that one before? All right. There's also how many music producers does it take to screw in a light bulb? I don't know. What do you think? Oh, she's back. All right. You were going to tell us all about toms and
Yeah.
what we're doing wrong with them and how we can do them more better.
Okay, so more better toms. First of all, uh, tom heads. And I'll talk about the toms as if I'm recording the Tool record. Um,
Mhm.
so tuning the toms, clear ambassadors all the way around. Those are
Mhm.
the most singing heads that you could put on the toms. So replace the heads, brand new heads. Okay, at the top mic, I use 2 mics on each tom. The top mic is usually a clip-on condenser that's very close to the head. The bottom mic is usually a 421, something like that, a Sennheiser 421,
Mhm.
and I have them both on each tom, and then I combine the top and the bottom onto one track.
Mhm.
So you have to have some kind of bussing or some kind of way to blend those two. Uh, I blend it so that the top head has the attack and the bottom head has the body. And that's where you're going to get the body. If you're looking for more body in your toms and less attack, then put a mic on the bottom of the tom and bring up that mic level until you get the balance that you like. One thing that you're going to want to do is if you've got a top mic and a bottom mic on the tom, that you're going to want to flip one of those 2 mics out of phase, probably the bottom mic flipped out of phase, and it'll just come to life. Boom. The other
Mm.
thing is as you're checking all the rest of your mics, check your overheads with your snare mic and
Mm.
your kick drum mic, and check them individually. Like if you have 2 overheads, turn off all of them but one of those overheads, put it in the middle, and then listen to your snare at the same time, and listen to phase and flip the phase on back and forth on those overheads. I swear to God, just that simple thing
Yeah.
of adjusting the phase on your overheads will make your toms just pop out. Um,
Sure.
that has to be like the most important thing, those important things as in recording toms. The other thing is in detailing the toms is to just make sure that the toms don't have ugly resonances that will get
Mhm.
in the way, and that will take some time and maybe some tape and twist this and you know work with it until it's all sorted. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting to hear that because, so many people, when they ask these types of questions, are probably often going to in their heads, am I using the wrong compression settings or am I not EQing it in the right spot? And you go right to like, well, let's first focus on what really matters. How does the
Yeah.
actual drum sound? And have you checked in addition,
Oh,
the mic placement, and then are you checking phase? Like it goes back to these more fundamental things. And I think one of the reasons our society and generation has become so obsessed with mixing is because it's the first time that a lot of new producers and engineers and mixers when they get to the mixing stage, they finally sit down and actually listen. And
Oh,
someone like
whoops.
you, you're
Late.
actually listening from the beginning, right? And I
Yeah.
think that's why people think it's all about mixing, is because that's finally they're sitting down, taking their time, critically listening. And rather than learning the top compression trick, it's often, hey, let's use this as a learning exercise to make sure that we're listening earlier in the process next time.
I think it's also kind of chicken shit for people to record and not add EQ and not add compression
Mm.
to the
Mm-hmm.
initial recording because you can shape that mix ahead of time, like we talked
Right.
about before, just by recording with the EQ and recording
Mm-hmm.
with compression. You push up the fader, suddenly it sounds finished already.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be afraid of
Mm-hmm.
of trying things when you're recording. It's always a shame to think that the engineers are afraid of making a mistake and making it sound bad or something. I don't know. You need to make mistakes. You do
Yeah.
in order to get good. So go ahead and make some mistakes.
I love it.
um, yeah,
Now, as far as the sample augmentation goes, are you as likely to augment toms as you are kicks and snares? Is that also an important part of that process?
same thing. Same thing.
Yeah.
So I do add a tom sample or several to each live tom, but again, it's tucked under the
Mhm.
original drum unless there's so much bleed in the original track that I have to hide it. Um,
Yeah.
but there's ways to adjust it so it all sounds real and that the drummer doesn't get upset. That that's not what he played and that's not the drums he played. So yeah,
Sure.
can't have that.
All right, going through some more of these questions, I'm going to have to start being a little bit more selective to get through these. But this one, I hope this one isn't too redundant with what we were talking about before. But Wygrit says, question, Sylvia, what's one piece of advice that you would give to a young female aspiring audio engineer or producer? Do you have anything specific for that?
Oh yeah, I've got good things to talk about that. Um, Here's one thing that will help you and probably the guys too, but in particular girls, because the less offended you are in a room full of stinky musicians, the easier it's going to be for you. And in fact, in life, the less that everyone is offended by what my neighbor said,
Mm-hmm.
uh, the funner it is, and the more chances you'll have for success. Uh, People want to have, like musicians want to have people in the sessions that they like hanging around with. Be someone that is a good hang. You know, as a girl, you can be a good hang. You know, just don't be offended because guys tell dirty jokes. And
Mm-hmm.
so one thing that I've done is I have a collection of my own dirty jokes that shut down and
Oh,
all of
goodness.
that.
Yeah.
So you got to have a little thick skin, and you got to be able to play with the guys. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that being said, just do know your stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
You just gotta really be ready for those questions when they come, and and they'll come, and
Yeah.
be there, show up.
Right. One of the things that I've noticed, we've done several mixing master classes with female producers and engineers now for MixCon, and they've routinely been some of our most popular ones. Like every year we do MixCon, when we have a female producer engineer on, they do so well. And there usually are, some comments about how beautiful they are, how they would love to marry that person. Oh, she has brains and she's beautiful too. And there are those comments. There's one here that says, let's keep this all about gear, not asking whether Sylvia is single. Those questions will come in. But the vast majority of them are like, I really do think that when a man sees a woman who is really knows her stuff, there's like so much respect there. And I haven't ever seen in the comments people like putting down women or trying to compete with him in that sense.
Yeah,
They're really
yeah.
genuinely like appreciative and like awesome to have you as happy to have you as part of the club is what I see, at least in the comments most of
And
the
that's the
time.
way I feel about it too.
Yeah.
I have heard horror stories from other
I'm
women
sure there
producers
are.
for years,
Yeah.
and I'm very sorry about all that. But for me,
Yep.
for the most part, smooth
Yeah, and
sailing.
I don't
And
want to gloss over the fact that there are going to be people you meet in your life who are total jerks and will totally go over the line with you.
oh my God, yes.
Yeah, that is
And
something. Yes, yeah.
yeah,
There's
it's
every
one of
single
the,
guy in here also has stories about how there were guys that did not want to be in the room with. It cuts across, but those
yeah,
awful experiences, I don't want to discount them because I know some people do have them. But
yeah,
I like how
they have.
you are really focusing on the positive and knowing that's not the majority of humanity. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I have faith. And I want to see more women doing it, but I don't blame women for not doing this job because it's fucking hard.
Yeah.
Um, and it just takes it takes your whole life. And not that I'm complaining because oh my God,
Right. Yes.
like you can't believe my life. Okay, I'm gonna be going going on a
Go for it.
trip. Let's see, I'm going to first to London, and then I'll be in South France for a month doing a record, and then I'm going to Venice to hang out and do another record, and then I'm going to Abbey Road in London, and then in Paris. Oh, and then in Paris, I'm going to be recording in the catacombs, um, in
Oh wow.
underneath the city.
Yeah.
That's the big thing on this trip. But before I go on that trip, I have to. My husband Chris found an old grand piano, and they gave it to us, the people that own it, because it's a wreck. And
Right.
what we like to do with old pianos, we like to destroy them. So 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 we found a local railroad that's willing to hit the piano with a train. So we're gonna before this is gonna happen before I go on this trip.
You are
Either
an
it's gonna
artist.
but we're gonna record it, and it's gonna be
Yes.
part of a recording, of course. The other option is to suspend it from a helicopter, and there's helicopters up in the woods that there's these logging helicopters that are like huge cranes, and they pick up your
Yes.
shit. So, we also have connections to this, helicopter company, and we might lift, the Grand with the helicopter and drop it from a height
All right,
and
I'm going to
record
give
it.
you my votes here. Okay, with the train will look cooler, no question about it. The
Yeah.
helicopter though might sound better because there'll be less background noise. If you're recording the destruction, you might get, more uninterrupted just the sound of the destruction without as much bleed from the train if you're dropping from the helicopter. Although the choppy sound, no, the choppy thing also makes a lot of noise. I don't know. It's hard to say.
Well, I'm planning on doing a lot of close miking with, like, pickups on
That's
the
exactly what I was thinking, like a
yeah,
little
so I
piezo or
don't
something in there, like contact mics or something.
yeah,
It's a great
exactly. I
idea.
don't expect there to be
A
any
wireless
real talk.
transmitter you don't mind losing. Oh, by the way, there was a joke that came in that you might like. So while we were telling jokes while you had to go away, because we had to keep people entertained, Mark Ruffino put in what I think is the perfect joke for you and Chris. It is, how many mics does an audio engineer need?
All of them.
Just one more.
I
Yeah, I thought you
like that
guys
joke.
having the giant mic museum would appreciate that one.
I know
Uh,
exactly which one it is too.
All right. We're almost at 5 o'clock here. We're gonna have to, it's been so much fun, Sylvia. We really have to
It's
start
been a
going here,
great,
but
great, great time. I really appreciate what you do. Thank you so
right
much
back
for
at you,
doing.
Sylvia. My
Yeah.
goodness, it's been absolutely great to have you on. I
Mm.
want to see if I can grab one more question as like the question we go out on, but now I'm afraid it's not going to be like, is it going to live up to being the great last question here? I'm just going to pick one at random. All
Okay.
right. Oh, okay. Here's one talking about the Transformers. Ed Mann says, question, I love Sylvia's madness for experimental sonic adventures. Can you explain how you wire the real Transformers in for your final mix? And my question is, you've talked about using a couple. What are those Transformers doing for you? Have you used a few different ones, and how do you describe the difference? Is this something we should try? And how do you actually go through the process of wiring them in? Do you just like take a couple of leads and attach them to a TRS cable? Like, what's going on?
Ah, ah, um, hmm. You know, each set of Transformers, I have some Transformers right here. I'll grab it. All right. So here's a pair of Transformers. These are the ones that I was talking about trying next.
Mm.
Now, there's, you know, I have no idea. I have no idea where to hook this stuff up.
Right?
But
You got to figure it out.
the some of these transformers have diagrams that show exactly um,
Hmm.
what how to get the certain effect. Let's say I want to raise okay, the Western Electric transformers have a way of um, adding a furriness across the entire mix,
Hmm.
raising the gain of the entire mix. And I
Hmm.
believe that was, oh God, I don't know how to explain it.
Was there a little
Mm.
ample? So, was the Western Electric ones? Did you get them from a guy who was kind of rehabbing them and adding some type of output gain stage to it as well, or is it is
No,
just raw
they're
transformers?
just raw, not
Yeah.
powered. They're just
Wow.
transformers, but they
Wild.
increase the volume. It depends on how you hook them up, though. If they'll
Mhm.
increase the volume or if they'll compress the volume.
Mm.
And I experimented with, okay, I'm going to try these in and these out. Okay,
Mhm.
that's interesting. We'll try it this way, and then I came to this setting, which is what I love. But uh, let's see, and I have to find a name. Hang on, I'll be right back.
Sure. So, some more comments in here. I'll read. One says Massey for president. I think that's a good one. Some people are jealous of your awesome life here.
Okay.
This person, Rocket, says, when I was a lost soul in San Francisco, I briefly met Sylvia and Kirk in a warehouse I was singing in. It was so long ago.
What? Kirk
Well,
Hammett? That was a long time ago. Holy cow! Who is this person?
I guess so. Rocket, if you want to tell any more about your story there, or if not, you can find her email on her website to follow up with her, probably through Chris there. But
And
yeah,
anyway,
it's
it
pretty
was
interesting.
Devin Powers who turned me on to these Western Electric transformers, and they're specifically Western Electric 111C transformers, and they're retired telephone transformers from the 30s. So they're
Mhm.
super old, but you can try all kinds of stuff. Try the little ones, put them across your mix bus, see what happens. You
Yeah.
might be surprised.
Good stuff. Well, some more great comments for you here. People say, Made on Tape says, I love how practical Sylvia's solutions are. Dark Trap says she never fails to show she's the best. Um,
Ah,
Chandler Jet says, I couldn't imagine a better answer for the clicky or kick drum question. You did go deep on that one, Sylvia. So much
good.
great stuff in here. So much praise for you in here. This one says, love Sylvia. Never leave her in a market. She's like a Michelin chef. She'll make a lovely sauce with pickles in the mix. I don't know exactly what that means, but it's very poetic and lovely.
I know what that
So
means.
good stuff. All right. Last quick question before we let you go. This is something we can round it out with. It's something we haven't touched on. You talked a little bit about doing some Atmos mixing all digitally. So Zach asks, with the focus on spatial audio, do you think Atmos mixing will become compulsory to production? Do you adapt your recording and mixing approach with Atmos in mind since it offers new capabilities? So do you have anything to add on about Atmos and whether you're
Yeah.
excited, what you like about it, or what you don't like about it, or anything on Atmos in that vein?
Well, a lot of people are frustrated right now because they've been
Mhm.
building Atmos rooms, and the labels have also been building Atmos rooms in
Mm.
house. So a lot
Mhm.
of that catalog work that we were all hoping to get our hands on is going in house, and they're doing it cheaply. And who could blame them?
Mhm.
However, the main issue for immersive right now is that the public can't listen to it,
Right.
right? The only
Mhm.
way that they can hear it is in headphones, uh,
Mhm.
to hear it properly the way that it was mixed. And that's not really the real thing either. It's like when I do my Atmos mixing and then I listen to it on headphones, it's like, well, there's nothing like being in a room full of speakers. The only way that the public will get a chance to hear Atmos is when it's adopted into automobiles. And
Sure.
that is coming. So look for in the next couple years all new cars hopefully will be adopting this new format, and that'll change uh, the deliverables that we'll have to be providing to the labels, because I think that everyone should be getting ready to provide Atmos mixes for every stereo mix. There should be an immersive component too.
Right.
Get ready for it. It's not here yet, but it's going to
Mm-hmm.
be here. And for the people who are already jumping in, it is frustrating right now, but all the new mixes, I believe, will need to have immersive uh, versions.
Right. Very cool. Well,
So
Sylvia Massy, thank you again so much for spending so much time with us here today. It was great to have you on. If
great.
people wanted to find out more about you and keep up with what you're doing, what are the best places to follow you and keep in touch?
Well, I have a website, sylviamassy.com, and that's spelled with no E in the Massy,
Mm-hmm.
Massy. You can also visit audioshop.com, which is spelled ODDIOSHOP. And that's actually goes to the same website. But that's
Right.
the website shows you the studio, it has a little bit about me. It's got some music samples if you want to listen to some mixes. Also, photos of the microphone museum. There's a store with all kinds of stuff for sale, including a lot of vintage gear.
Yeah.
So have
A-
fun and come and visit.
And including the book, Recording Unhinged, which has
Oh
been
yeah,
recommended by some of our viewers here.
oh
Some
yeah.
people said that they've gotten it. Yeah. So check that out. I definitely have to get a copy of that now.
You
Beautiful.
have to. You have to.
Yes, I didn't. I can't believe I'm like one of the world's biggest secret Sylvia Massy fans. You didn't know until now, and I didn't even know about the book. But one of the things that I've liked recently, another good thing that people can check out is you've done some great videos on your own channel. There was one where you were using a cell phone to get cell phone delay.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
yes. So if people want to check out some of the videos you've made for yourself on your channels, what are the best places? Is it Instagram? Is it YouTube? What are the places to keep up with you
YouTube
there?
channel. Yeah. Sylvia Massy YouTube channel. Yeah. Come and check it
Right.
out. There's a bunch of silly stuff on there, and I'll be adding some exceptionally good video coming up this fall.
Awesome. All right. Looking
All
forward
right.
to that. So go and subscribe to Sylvia's channel right now before you forget so you don't miss those when they come. This has been Justin Coletti of Sonic Scoop. Thanks so much for hanging out with me with Sylvia Massy. Big thanks again, not only to Sylvia, but also to Jason Isbell, Grammy winning artist, letting us go under the hood of his track. Real privilege, real treat. Sounded amazing. Sylvia did a great job with it. And also big thanks to Sound Toys. All of our MixCon masterclasses are free to the public. Thanks to our sponsors. This one is free to the public thanks to Sound Toys. Sylvia used the crystallizer. She used the Lil plate. She used the CQ. She used the microshift, a whole bunch of stuff in the mix. So go check out the full-length presentation if you haven't already. Also, one last quick note. We are giving away thousands upon thousands of dollars worth of free gear in the MixCon Mega Giveaway. There is a link to that in the description down below. More than $10,000 worth of gear we're giving away, and there's 3 chances to win. Last but not least, go to mix-con.com. That's mix-con.com, where you can RSVP for all the future masterclass premieres and live Q&As that are coming at you. We have a whole month or two, a month and a half at least, of presentations coming your way. I think you're going to love them. Sylvia, thanks again so much for being here.
All right, Justin, you're great. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
You're the greatest. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. You're the second greatest after Sylvia. See you next time.